Hey everybody, Phil here. Today we're going to look at a $2 million pot played between Jason Koon and Kane Kalas. It gets big early and stays that way as the hand progresses. Jason Koon, a really strong player and a very close friend of mine. I'm going to see if I can get inside his head and figure out what he was thinking. Let's dive into the action.
Get say you're coming in half an hour. I said that a lot of people would be a lot richer if they did that. You sit down and then they start waiting. No, this is 11. No. I don't think get played the hand.
All right, so Jason Koon opened to 11,000. This is not a straddle pot, just 2,000, 4,000 with a 4,000 ante. Kane Kalas is going to squeeze with pocket tens right now to 55,000. It's kind of like the first pot he's 3-bet. Jason Koon with ace queen might feel this is a tighter range, but might still feel a little obligated to see a flop. So he is going to actually 4-bet here to 120,000. His read is that Kalas is just going to play very straightforward. So this is Kane's first 3-bet.
So the first thing I want you to note is that this graphic is actually incorrect. There was not a straddle in this hand. The blinds are 2,000, 4,000 with a 4,000 ante. This is a massive, massive game. And it folds to Jason Koon, who opens, not 3-bets, to 11,000. Mikita Badziakouski, which I believe I said correctly, or close to it, at least for an American, calls with 9-8 suited, very standard. He could decide to 3-bet this hand. He opts to just call, try to play a multi-way pot. And Kane Kalas goes for the 3-bet squeeze with pocket tens, also relatively standard thus far. But here's where it gets interesting. Jason Koon in position could opt to call this. He could even consider folding, but instead of that, he decides to 4-bet. Now, for a lot of people, 4-betting a hand like ace-queen is sort of a foreign concept because they think their 4-bets need to be value 4-bets like, let's say, ace-king maybe, or queens plus, or they need to be bluffs like ace-5 suited. Actually, ace-queen offsuit makes a really good bluffing hand because when you call with it, it doesn't play that well three-way against a very strong 3-betting range and a pretty strong cold calling range that's likely to call again behind you. If it were suited, it would make a better call. So it actually makes a good bluff. Ace-queen blocks a lot of very strong hands, namely aces and queens, as well as ace-king, and of course, ace-queen. Although ace-queen offsuit is probably folding to this 4-bet, ace-queen suited probably calls. So good blockers. Jason Koon decides to 4-bet. I like this play. It does force Mikita out of the pot with his 9-8 suited. He can't just take 2 more raises to the face there. And it goes back to Kane Kalas, and he has a decision here.
I don't need a visa, do I?
So I think Kane's going to try and see a flop.
Gonna have 2 million.
120,000 euros each in there.
Getting a decent price, having pocket tens, being relatively deep. So even if he is beat, he's got decent odds to flop a set and stack Jason. So I like his play as well. Everybody is Phil approved thus far and probably solver approved. And these players actually probably know better than me.
Flop is 653 rainbow.
For the rest of South Korea, you gotta apply for the visa. And Macau has 7 days visa. But so this is why Jeju's, it's closer than Macau to Shanghai.
Hey Tom, is Jeju better than Manila?
So 128,000 from Jason Koon. Can't imagine Kalas doing anything but calling.
Flop is 653 rainbow. And this is a relatively good flop for Jason's range against Kane's range. I mean, it looks like Kane Kalas has pocket pairs, probably tens plus, potentially jacks plus. He might not always squeeze tens here. He's probably always squeezing jacks. And then suited broadways, you know, some ace king off, some ace king suited, ace queen suited, king queen suited, queen jack suited, etc. He's not going to have much 5-6 suited or 6-7 suited. He'll have a little bit. I feel like a lot of those hands just call pre-flop rather than reopen the action with a 3-bet, but he certainly could have those hands. But on the whole, this is a board that kind of whiffs his high card and high pair heavy range, which even though he can still have hands like tens, jacks, queens, Jason Koon is representing a hand like queens, kings, aces. And so he's got that range advantage and he's going to keep pushing it, keep applying pressure. And he goes ahead and he bets 128K. I suspect Jason's going to bet his full range for this sizing in this spot. Jason's got very dialed in fundamentals. He knows his strategy very well. And I would expect on this board, it's a full range c-bet, and I don't think he's splitting sizing. So I think he's probably saying, I'm gonna just bet this size with my entire range. Kane with 10's not loving it, but when you get the 6-high flop, you're not folding just yet. You're gonna force Jason to push you around a couple more streets before you consider laying this down.
Here comes a turn. Koon has 24% chance to win the spot. Looking for an ace or a queen. The turn's a 10, so top set for Kalas. He's got a 100% chance to win here. He should just keep checking, trying to let Koon barrel him off of a pair, I suppose.
So Kane makes the call, and they head to the offsuit 10 turn. Jackpot for Kane Kalas. Jason Koon doesn't know it, but he's in a world of trouble now. The 10 is actually a pretty good card for Jason to keep barreling. Like I said, I don't know that Kane's always gonna squeeze 10s, but he is gonna have jacks and queens. He's also gonna have ace king. He's also gonna have some ace queen suited that call the flop. I think against a decent sized bet, hands like ace king, ace queen need to fold. Hands like jacks can consider folding. Hands like queens can consider folding. So still having 2 overs to hands like jacks, still blocking aces, blocking queens. I think Jason makes a good decision to keep betting here.
Oh, okay.
And he doesn't size too big because on a board like this, where there are no flush draws, no straight draws that either of them are very much likely to have, you don't need that much protection. While I would have assumed that a bet of closer to 200,000, 220,000, to go a little bit more geometric with the bet sizings would have been standard. If Jason's betting 160,000, then Jason's probably right and I'm probably wrong. Now, I don't know if Jason's gonna continue betting his full range here on the turn. I think that would be a little too ambitious. So he is gonna have some give ups here. He is gonna check some strong hands as well. But with ace queen, which can fold out ace king, I think the bet makes sense.
I didn't know that. Your project's doing good.
Chinese guy want to buy it.
So Kane calls again. I don't really think Koon expected Kane to fold the turn too much. I think people are being a little bit more quiet now that the spot's getting bigger. River's an ace. That is a bad card for Jason Koon. He might think he can value shove this hand.
The ace rolls off on the river, and there is 840K in the pot, just over 500K left to play in stacks. And while Jason has to worry that he's beat by something, there are actually not a lot of hands that beat him. The main consideration here is whether or not Kane would play ace-king this way. On the flop, I think he certainly would. Pre-flop, would he ever 5-bet? Maybe, maybe not. Turn, would he ever fold? Maybe. I think he's reasonably likely to fold the turn with ace-king. Even though, obviously, Jason loses to 10s, as we can see here. He loses to aces, but there's only one combo of that left. Ace-king, there are a lot of combos of, and that's probably the most likely hand Jason needs to be worried about, I think, given the action. So if he can eliminate a lot of that, he should be quite happy with the spot and have a very easy value jam. I think most of Kane's range at this point is going to be like jacks, queens, kings. So really nice card for Jason in theory, and for Jason range versus range. Of course, we can see hand versus hand. It's pretty unfortunate.
All in.
So Jason Koon shoves all in, and Kane Kalas, he played one pot, but he just won 920,000 euros, 131,000 euros.
Jason does decide to shove here after some deliberation. I think he has to, having gotten here, and I think he should be relatively happy about it, as I said. Kane, of course, snaps him off with trip 10s, and Jason knows it's bad news before he even sees the cards. The one thing I want you to take away from this is a lot of people will view a hand like this, not a very good hand, up against a monster. What you need to keep in mind is that, first of all, he's rarely going to have run into this hand from Kane. So while it looks very silly when he's looking at trip 10s, most of the time he's going to get a fold from different parts of Kane's range, or even a river hero call with a hand like pocket queens or kings. The other thing you need to consider is that if you're unwilling to go off like this, then there's no reason for your opponents to call you down when you actually do have a big hand. Jason is somebody who is incredibly balanced, and you can't just make an easy fold against him anywhere because he could be doing something like this. So keep in mind that bluffing is an important part of the game, not just because you can win money with your bluffs, but because you can then get paid off when you actually have a good hand. A lot of people think bluffs are optional, and tend to just skip bluffs, and any observant player just folds when they put in a decent amount of money. I hope you enjoyed the hand. I will see you next time for another one. Until then, take care and good luck.
Yeah, that seemed pretty aggressive from Jason Koon. But very well played from Kane Kalas, just kind of taking his time on the flop and turn and river. Really tried to make it look like he had jacks.
Everyone okay with 10K ante from the big blind?